Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Patrick Afrifa. As a seasoned real estate agent, investor, and a landlord, I'm here to share my expertise and insights to help you succeed in your real estate journey. Today, I have an essential topic for all property owners: how to select the best tenants for your rental property. This step-by-step guide will ensure you find the best tenants and also protect your investments. Often enough, landlords wrongly assume that personal connections or even cultural affiliations are sufficient indicators of a good tenant, which is not true. And I know this from personal experience. In the beginning of my real estate investment journey, I made such assumptions and it cost me a lot emotionally, financially, time wise, and even put my investment property, at risk. So it is not entirely true. And any landlord knows that quality tenants will always lead to what? A peace of mind. Because we do understand that quality tenants are going to give us less headache, less turnover, and steady rental income. Now, I do understand that the entire process involved in selecting or finding the best tenant sometimes can be challenging. Why? Because it can be time consuming due to the amount of diligence that you have to, apply. And especially for high value investors, you know, entrepreneurs or professionals that have multiple real estate or multiple properties, it becomes a little tedious. I do believe that there is a huge risk in cutting corners when it comes to finding the best tenant, because the bad tenant is a risk on its own. They are going to cost you a lot of legal issues. You are going to waste a lot of your time. Like I mentioned earlier, due to my lack of diligence, and part of it was also ignorance. As a new investor who didn't know much about what to look for, it cost me a lot of legal fees, a lot of time wasting, even significant repair cost that I haven't even fully recovered from, especially when it comes to that particular rental property. Think about it. It's not just going to be financial loss, but even opportunity cost. When it comes to trying to expand or even scale your portfolio, just one rental property or just one tenant, one bad tenant in your rental property can cost you dearly. The time involved in the time that you are going to invest in getting rid of that tenant alone could be the time you could have been using to what? Find new properties, or even partnering with other investors to build on your investment portfolio. Now, with all this said, there is still a way to go about this to be able to find the best tenants. With all the challenges and the hard lessons that I had to learn from my first investment property, I was able to develop a system that was able to help me with my later investment properties to find the best tenants that gave me less headache and actually even took better care of my rental property than I even did. I've created a system, and this system is going to be beneficial to any landlord, whether you're a seasoned landlord or a new landlord. Even if you are planning on working or even working with a property management company, I always tell people this: regardless of what it is, whether you are running your own investment property or someone is helping you with that, when it comes to selecting tenants, never leave it for someone else to do it for you. You want to be involved in the process. You want to be making the final decisions. You want to be the one actually defining or coming up with the requirements of the tenants, and do follow, you know, the city or the county in which your property is, do follow their rules and their ordinance. That way you are also going to avoid future headache. I For my process, I've divided it actually into three different buckets. The first is pre-screening preparation. The second is detail screening. The third is decision and documentation. Now, I'm going to tackle each one of them. I'm actually going to even share some of my questions and some of the processes that I usually follow. And I've created this in order for me to use it on any investment property that I have when it comes to finding and selecting the best tenants for that, rental property. It is more like my guide, my Bible, my go-to. And I keep updating it with time, because for me, I see it as a process or a system that keeps evolving. Now, I want to share with everybody that way, you can pick something out of it. If you are new, especially if you're a new investor, you can use this as a guide, a beginning guide. With time, you can, modify it to suit, your goal or your process that you want to adapt in the near future. Now, for seasoned investors, you could also take a look at it and see if you can draw some value from these processes and steps that I have. I hope this is going to be beneficial to everybody. During my pre-screening preparation stage, I usually focus on three major tasks. One, clarifying my criteria. Two, crafting communication. Three, collecting contact details of prospective tenants. Now, I want to share with you example of my criteria or requirement I usually use when I'm trying to screen tenants for any of my rental properties. So this is a typical rental requirements that I have. I always share this with the tenants or the prospective tenants before they even put an application in. That way, I will be transparent with them, and they will not have to go and pay for application fee and then find out that they don't meet or they don't qualify for my rental. I tend to stick to my requirements. I don't deviate from it, because By doing that, I save myself from having to pick or select a bad tenant that will end up giving me a headache. I would rather it takes me a longer time to find the right or the best tenant than to rush in finding a tenant just to fill my property. As a landlord, you should know how much your rent is going to be. Usually, you can ask a real estate agent who services the area that you are planning on uh, uh, renting. Then, of course, you need to decide, whether you are going to require security deposit, how long the lease is going to be. Usually, I prefer 1 year lease, and I always ask for a 1 month security, 1 month rent as for a security deposit. Depending on the property type, that is going to determine the type, the that is going to determine which utilities the rent is going to cover. When it comes to the rental application, I usually use apartments.com. And let's assume this is a 4 bedroom house, and I have tenants that are applying that have 2 kids, 2 adult kids, plus a spouse that makes them 4. I'm going to require all 4 of them to put in an application, and they should all meet these requirements, especially the ones that are going to pay the rent. And when it comes to credit score, it also depends, right? Now, this is still very rigid requirement that I have. I tend to stick to, a minimum of 580. And if you are between 580 to 610, I usually will will grant you conditional approval. And of course, there is going to be a non-refundable moving fee. Now, if your credit score is above 610, there is not going to be a moving fee. Now, from experience, sometimes you can get somebody who has a credit history that is less than a year or even a year, and their credit score is, let's say, about 750 or even 800. From my experience, I had a tenant like that, or yeah, an applicant like that. But since back then I didn't specify, the age, the minimum age of their credit history, it was very difficult for me to deny an application. And for the city of Chicago, the city ordinance is very favorable to tenants. I had to learn from previous experience that it makes sense to specify the minimum requirement when it comes to credit age. So for this particular rental, the minimum credit age that we had set up or we were requiring was 3 years. No bankruptcy, no collections, no evictions, no criminal record. And also, we require a minimum of 3 times the rent when it comes to income. Since Section 8 applicants are more likely to apply, by law, we cannot say no to them. So we also have a requirement for them. Our requirement is your voucher, one, needs to cover majority of the rent, at least 95% of the rent, and your income should be at least 2 times the rent. This way, no one can come back and tell us that, oh, we are denying Section 8 applicants. Now, for someone in the Section 8 program to meet these requirements, that tells me that that person is very serious about their credit history and even their credit as a whole. and that person is more likely going to be more responsible. We don't want to see any default on their credit history within the past 12 months. They need to get a rental insurance before we even hand them the keys. No rental income, no rental insurance. It doesn't matter whether they qualify, they met all our requirements, and they even made a security deposit payment. They are not getting the keys. In addition, they need to add or include a rental, my business, and also they need to include me or my business as a beneficiary on the rental insurance. And as you can see on here, we've made it clear that to apply, we ask the tenants to look up this listing on apartments.com. Now, when we list them, we don't only list it on apartments.com. I usually will go with apartments.com, Facebook Marketplace, Trulier, and Zillow. That way, I will have a wider pool of prospects coming in. But at the end of the day, I always use apartments.com for my application, because from my experience, their application process and even report is more thorough. And I will talk a little bit more about it when it comes to details screening at stage. Now, this should cover, the clarification of my criteria. I decided to take a little time to go through this, just so that you understand why I have these specific requirements for all my prospects. Now, when it comes to crafting communication, I always have a Google Forms created, and the Google Forms are going to be created based on what I have in my requirements or in my criteria. So as you can see here, I'm trying to, communicate with the prospects that I need certain things. I have certain questions for them. So actually, let me take a step back. When people reach out to express their interest, the first thing I do is to share the pre-screening link with them. Oh, and by the way, if you want to know how to create a Google Forms, for your pre-screening, I do have a video that you can find the link in in the description below. I'm going to, put it in the description. You should be able to watch that video and see how I created this Google forms for the pre-screening survey. So what this pre-screening survey is doing is two things. It's communicating with the prospects what I'm looking for my future tenants, and also to collect that data. And when I get the response, and as you can see here, I have a sample response here that I created from my previous video. So I will be able to review these response and follow up with them. One, there are multiple things that I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to prevent them from, one, wasting their time, two, wasting my time also, so that we will all be transparent and not waste each other's time. As I stated earlier, I do share my requirements with all the prospects. So when they reach out, there is an email that goes out to them to tell them how to complete, where and how to complete the pre-screening form, survey, and my requirements. And I always make it clear to them that if they do not qualify, they don't have to go through the pain or the process in completing this. So as you can see, The Google Forms is going to one, the Google Forms and my requirement that I send out to them is going to communicate what I'm looking for, the type of tenants I'm looking for. And if they meet that criteria, they should go ahead and complete the forms. Right when they are done, Google Forms is going to send me a copy of, send me an email. I can go in and check the response. And if they meet the requirements, we will move on to the next step. Let's talk about my detailed screening stage. For me, I tend to make it very simple. Let's assume we've completed with the pre-screening. We've identified a few prospects that may qualify for my rental. What I usually prefer to do, instead of showing the rental to each one of them, setting multiple appointments for showing, I will pick as either a Saturday or Sunday or both days and just tell all of them that, hey, I'm going to have an open house. Just come over, take a look, let me know if you are still very interested. When I do that, when I inform them, I also post it on social media, specifically Facebook. I've even used Craigslist before, but I haven't, got much luck on Craigslist. So I usually tend to stick with Facebook Marketplace and the rental platforms. That's Zillow, Trulia, apartments.com. That helps in bringing the right crowd. So on the open house, I'm going to have those that have been pre-screened and those that have not even been pre-screened or who haven't even reached out to me yet. On that day, what I do is I'm going to have a sign-in sheet. I'm going to see the individuals that will show up. Sometimes the people that even complete the pre-screening survey do not even show up. That's why I tend to still allow those that have not completed the pre-screening to attend the open house. That way, I'll have a fair mixed a mixture of crowd there. They are going to be asking me questions. I'm also going to ask them questions. So for me, that is my first. I guess the pre-screening is my first screening for those that complete that. And then when they come over, I'll have my second screening because I need to know who is coming to rent my rental property. From talking to them, listening to them, watching the interaction with other people who are there at the open house, or even their interaction with me. And trust me, I've encountered all different types of prospects, knowing very well that I'm going to probably be their future landlord. Some of them are either rude, very disrespectful, even though you even tell them, hey, this is what my requirements are, and they know very well that they don't even meet the requirements. Some are even going to lie to you on paper. All right. So I've seen it all. And like I stated earlier, I always make it clear to them that this is what I'm looking for. I don't want to deceive anybody because, for one, it is not cheap to, the application fee is not cheap, especially if you have, a large family that has more individuals that are 18 years and above. And That the specific requirements that I showed, that was actually for a four-bedroom house that was almost 3,000 square foot. So it's a huge house. So it's going to be for a larger family. So I don't want people to waste their money and their time. But like I said, you get different people that show up. So that is part of my screening. It helps me know the face behind you know that survey response. Now, the actual screening. So sometimes they can even complete their application while, whilst they are at the and the last piece, analyze the application. So when apartments.com run the background check, the credit check, the income verification, and all that. And one good thing too about apartment.com is that if they do not provide the right, income information, sometimes it will even, not allow them to complete or even complete the entire application, right? Analysis of the application, usually, if the first two have been done right, it makes the analysis stage or step very easy, because all you are doing is you are looking at everything on there to cross check with what you already have with your requirement. And like I said earlier, I always share my requirements with the prospects. But trust me, majority of them do not even look at the requirements. They just put the application in. And so from the analysis stage, if they don't meet especially the credit requirement, so let's take a look at my requirements one more time as I'm going through this. So let's say, for instance, so usually I start with their income. Their income has to be at least three times the rent if they are not Section 8. If they are Section 8, their income has to be at least two times the rent. If it's not, I'm not even going to bother to look at anything else. If they meet that, that's when I will look at their credit and decide whether they are going to be conditional approval or just straight up approval. I'm also going to check, to see if they have pets, the size of the pets, because in my questionnaire, I do have pet requirements, right? Because depending on my rental property, depending on the flooring of my rental property, I may want either a smaller dog, or I may not even want a dog or a pet at all. So I tend to specify that. In this requirement, it doesn't I didn't really specify that in this requirement, because for this particular property, the flooring was a vinyl flooring. So I wasn't too worried about damages from pets or from dogs. And for a big house like that, most larger families are more likely going to have, pets, especially dogs. So trying to say that, you don't want dogs, you are literally, shrinking the pool of prospects. So that is why I didn't have in this requirement. But if it were to be a smaller unit with different flooring and stuff like that, it may be it will probably be a requirement, a part of my requirement. So as I was saying, with all of this, when they answer these questions, I'm supposed to be able to screen them, filter them out, and let them know that they won't qualify. But if they didn't complete the pre-screening, the actual application information is going to help me what decide whether they are conditionally approved, or even denied. And by law, when you deny somebody's application, you need to tell them the reason why. And going back to what I keep saying, we always provide our requirements that we did know ahead of time. And when we deny them, we are also going to point out in our requirement where they didn't meet what we are looking for. So, rental income, the credit score. Oh, by the way, just like I stated, no bankruptcies, no collections, no evictions, no criminal records. These four requirements are mandatory. And like I said earlier, some people even don't know whether they have collections on their credit report. They tend to find out after they've already put the application in. And unfortunately, we have to what? Say no to them because that is our requirements. And like I said, every state, every county might be slightly different. So some of these requirements may have to be tweaked a little bit to comply with the laws and regulations in your jurisdictions. This particular property was actually in one of the suburbs of Chicago. It wasn't even the city of Chicago. For the city of Chicago, my requirements are slightly different, maybe because the city of Chicago has different rules and different ordinances and stuff like that. And that is why I also stated earlier on that one, getting a real estate agent to tell you what the rent is and even what the rules and regulations are in that particular region that you are trying to rent at is very, very important. So, with my detailed screening, to recap, I need to know that they meet the credit requirement, 3 times the rent. And let's say, for instance, if it's a family, as long as all their income combined can meet that 3 times the rent, I'm okay with that. The same with Section 8. As long as it's 2 times the rent, I'm okay with that. No bankruptcy, no collections, no evictions, no criminal record. And of course, the credit score is going to help me determine whether they are going to be conditionally approved or they are going to be approved right away. Then I need to make sure that regardless of what the credit score is, their credit history is at least 3 years old. So as you can see, this is what I usually do to screen my tenants. With the help of apartments.com, I'm able to gather all the necessary information on data to be able to decide whether these tenants or these prospects are going to meet my requirement. One more thing I want to emphasize on: apartments.com is never going to call their references to validate that. So as part of the analysis stage, you want to call the references to validate, to confirm that yes, they are former tenants or they used to rent or they even work there, right? Usually with the income, since they are going to provide W-2 or pay stubs, apartments.com is able to verify that. But it's usually difficult for apartments.com to verify, references and previous landlords. So you, the landlord, it is very important to pick up the phone and call those people. And sometimes they've already informed them that you are going to call them. So the trick to it is that when you call, you want to act as if you are trying to rent a place. Don't straight up go ahead and tell them that you are a landlord and you are calling to verify if this prospect used to rent with them and if they are even good tenants. Just pretend as if you are looking for a place to rent, just to throw them off, to be able to, flash out applicants that could be troublesome applicants for their current landlords, and their current landlords are actually trying to get rid of them. You don't want those tenants. So by so doing, you will be able to find out that, oh, they probably didn't give you their landlords information, and you can try and get that from them. Especially if you've been able to flash out or clarify, check to see if truly that is a landlord or not. Let's talk about decision and documentation. For previous tenants' privacy, or even previous prospects' privacy, unfortunately, I will not be able to share any of their application to kind of walk you through how I normally come up with my decision. So I hope you will understand and respect that. Let's talk about decision and documentation. During the decision and documentation stage, as you know, during the detailed screening, I'm able to determine the tenants that I want to approve. Now, there are times that I may get two or three best tenants, applicants. What I usually do is I go according to first come basis, right? But I always try my best to communicate with all of them to let them know that, hey, we now have three strong applicants, and we've stacked them according to when we received their completed application. Now, even though you've approved somebody's application, that doesn't mean that they still want to rent with you. That's why it's always advisable to at least have one or two backup. That way, doesn't, when the first one pulls out, you can, reach out to the second one. And as I'm saying, or as I'm speaking, I've had that happen to me not once, not twice, but multiple times. So I understand it's always better to be transparent with everybody, and also protect yourself. Have, backups, just in case someone, decide to change their minds, because some there are so many times that your rental is not the only rental they are putting application in for. So try and have a backup. During the decision and documentation stage, there are a few things that I normally like to do. Um, One of them happens to be walk through, discussing with the tenant, the logistics, how they are going to pay their rent, to share all the detailed information, and of course, send out a copy of the lease for them to sign, right? Which brings me to the three most important tasks or steps that I have under the decision and documentation stage. That is secure signature, confirm condition, document details. And I've already, touched on the securing of the signature, which is when, the lease is fully completed and signed both by the tenant and by me, the landlord, right? That way we'll all be on the same page, knowing their moving date, making sure that they've made the security deposit and all the other necessary payments. They've also got the rental insurance, which is a hard requirement for all my rentals. Now, I also would like to show you how I go about my how I do confirm the condition of my rental unit. So I do so on the move-in date, I do a walkthrough with the tenants so that we will all see the current condition of the property. We are also going to do a walkthrough on their last day to check and make sure that the property is in the same condition as they moved in. I do my best to, like I said, be transparent and be fair to everybody. Now, instead of you creating your own checklist, you can use Zillow actually has a rental checklist you could use, right? This is the one I normally like to use, and I will share with you right quick. So on that date, when we are doing the walkthrough, as I stated earlier, we want to confirm the condition of the property. So let's start from the top. So we are going to gather the tenant's information. And in this case, of course, your property or my property's address is what is going to be put there. Their moving date, the time, and who actually signed it or completed it. As you can see, we have a move in and a move out. So usually what I prefer to do is to have two copies of this form. That way, both of us are going to have copies by the end of the day. So I prefer them actually completing the form whilst themselves while we are walking through, but we are all transparent. We are all being transparent and discussing and pointing things out. So as you can see, it's a very detailed form. So this is what I always use because it helps me gather all the details or all the data that I need to gather. Now, on the move out, we do the same thing. When there is any damages, I can estimate what the cost of repair or replacement is going to be. Um, and as you can see, I'll be able to, tally that and send it to them. Oh, by the way, what I also do is that after the moving, when we complete this form and sign, I always make a soft copy and email it to them. That way, they can have a soft copy saved in their email or on their computer. Often enough, on move out dates, they could not even find the sheet. So they can go back and refer to that. Because guess what? On a move out date, I'm bringing my copy because I have saved both a soft copy and a hard copy. And that is what I'm going to take with me for us to go through it. So this process helps me complete the confirmation of the entire condition of my rental property, and at the same time capture all the details of my interaction with the tenant on that date. Because there are times that there may be certain things that I need to fix, right? Maybe replace a light bulb or something like that. You know, the move-in walkthrough is going to help me capture all of that. Whether I want to take pictures, and there are times that some tenants prefer to take pictures. That helps them to go back to check on the day that they are moving out. So, in all, this is the process that I usually follow when it comes to decision making and documentation. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this guide for tenant screening valuable, and it will help you find the perfect tenant for your rentals. If you found this video helpful and would like to see more of this content in the near future, please give thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't also forget to hit the bell icon. That way, in future, when we upload new videos, you will be notified. Until next time, best of luck in all your real estate ventures. Thank you.